Peace. Nafir Nun once again. Some people know me as Brother D, or Mr. Slate, or D End, or Doctor Who. The names are arbitrary. For the purposes of these recordings, I will be called, or be referring to myself as Nafir Nun. Now, today, the discourse is going to be generally based on a topic that, it's gotten widespread attention over the years, and I still don't really think that it's been analyzed correctly for the most part. Even the terminology that we use to associate this phenomenon with our experience is dangerous. Now, what I'm talking about is white supremacy. Now, yes, I know it seems like it's a pretty simple, well, I know what that means. Now, well, let's see if your ideas line up with mine. And, you could be right, I could be wrong. I don't think I am right now, though. Now, in and of itself, that combination of words, white supremacy, is almost an oxymoron. It's like the little giant. Yeah, basically. Because if you look at we can go into the dumb diatribe. Well, it's just a color, and all colors are equal. It's just a color. Yellow is equal to purple, and purple is equal to green. It's just a color. Yeah, sure, we can nullify everything like that, but I'm not going to do that today. We're talking about white supremacy as it applies to the human family. Now, that in itself is also a false statement. It's like an oxymoron. So, we can get into many different aspects, the thousands of different aspects that comprise humans and the human experience, but it's not necessary. I could categorize the different tenets of white supremacy, and it's not necessary. I don't need to do that. It's much simpler than that. Now, as it stands, white supremacy, as it applies to humans, would be the systematic or the structure that has been placed, the institutional structure that has been placed within society that holds people that have claimed white status, which generally are people that have pale skin, straight hair. These days, anyway. Before, I'm pretty sure it was much more difficult to claim the status of white. Italians were not considered white, Irish were not considered white, Greeks were not considered white. I think in some regions, some of the northern European regions, and regions like the Slavic regions, I still think that they do not consider Italians and Greeks and whatnot to be white. But that's neither here nor there right now. What we're talking about is what's going on right now, and a lot of people have been allowed to claim this white status, and so even people that are mixed race, as long as they can pass, they can claim it and be treated as such until, let's say, you have to marry into more distinguished or more privileged or more distinct families. So this is that concept, that they are held in high esteem and everybody else is lesser. Now, if we look at genetics, which is the building blocks of what makes up a human, we know that, and this has been scientifically proven, this is beyond a shadow of a doubt, this is not hearsay or conjecture or hypothesizing, this is just fact. the genes that comprise the people who are classifying themselves as white and who we see today as white people have the most recessive genetics on the planet when talking about the human family. And yes, we're all family. But they have the weakest genetics. So to claim superiority is easily overcompensation. Now, why would there be a need for this overcompensation? Now, I think that's really the main issue here. We can get into the how and what and all that stuff, but I think why needs to be attacked first. Now, the reason that white supremacy exists on this plane is to preserve the phenotype that people who consider themselves to be white hold. And this is typically straight hair and pale skin. I would go so far as to say blonde hair, blue eyes, the hair is straight as well, and pale skin. And that will be the physiological traits, or the, well, yeah, let's just call it the physiological traits for now, because other terms might, you know, I don't want to get into that shit right now. Like, sometimes, well, what does that mean? And you know what I'm saying? The traits that make up a white person today, or a European, what we'd consider a European, because everything's been obscured to the point where everything's almost fucking gray. So I'm trying to be as particular as I can, but at the same time as simple as I can. So the individuals that you would consider to be white today, it is to maintain their presence on planet Earth. That is the reason that white supremacy exists. Without that system in place, everybody would have mixed up already, and everybody would look like me. Well, not like me, but like me. Like, and that's not something that's desired. That is not something that's desired. And I don't knock that. Okay. It's a primal urge, in my opinion, to want your offspring to resemble you, and to emulate the things that you have done, and to better you. So, you want them to be almost a carbon copy of yourself, but just a better version. Like, I think this is a primal urge. I haven't done the Freudians and all that shit to, like, yeah, I studied all that. Yeah, but what, I haven't really went into that on a scholastic level to say, well, you know, everybody has this primal, but I'm pretty sure that, you know, when you look in the mirror, you're supposed to like what you see. And if you like what you see, you want to have your progeny or your offspring looking something like you. Or, even if you had some low self-esteem or whatnot, you're saying that the product that comes out of you is going to be the better version of you. Now, can I say that a European or a person that considers themselves to be white doesn't want to have this experience as well? I think that's ludicrous. I think that you would have to want to have that experience. I think it's a primal urge. And if we mix, they go. Now, this is why, this is really the bottom line as to why everything is cool with the relationships of friends, etc., until that age of innocence is done. Until that's expired. And now sex starts coming into play. And pregnancy. And progeny. And offspring. And those things start to factor in to the human experience, into your child's life. That is when those issues become more important, seemingly. So, and I know this because when I was a kid and I'm in school, you know, playing and stuff, I didn't give a shit what the guy looked like to be my friend. I wasn't thinking about sex. I was like, there was a time when us guys were not thinking about sex. And we were thinking about G.I. Joe and Transformers and He-Man, and does Armadip have Battle Cat? So I don't give a shit what Armadip looks like. I don't give a shit what Jeremy looks like. I don't give a shit what Tyrone looks like. I don't care. Do you have Mirage? Because I have Jazz. He has Optimus Prime. The other dude has Starscream, and he has Megatron. So we need to get the other guy. Does he have him? Let him join the team. We didn't give a shit what you look like. It didn't matter. And I'd say I'm a dude, so I can't speak for girls, but I have daughters. And my daughters do not give a shit what you look like. Now, well, they're kids, right? So they don't give a shit what, like, do you have the toys that I want to play with too? Do we have compatible toys? That is basically what, is important to a kid. So we know that these issues are not, they're not natural. They're not natural, even though I'm saying that it's a primal urge. I didn't say it's natural. I said it's primal. Now, there are different, primal, primate, it's the animal urge, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's not the higher level thinking. So, this is the reason why white supremacy is coming to play. Because, daddy wants to see a little him. Or mommy wants to see a little her come onto the planet through their union. For the most part. And this is why you'll see everything's cool with you and your friends and your white friends or whatever, until you went home with your white girlfriend and daddy saw you. And daddy told his daughter that he gonna disown her ass if she sticks around with you. And it's not because you're a bad person, because you're a thug, it's because he knows that for the last 1,000 years plus, they've been keeping themselves with white people to maintain him. Like, he wouldn't be a white guy right now if they didn't do that. He wants to make sure that he don't screw up the last 1,000 years of planning. To put it that simple. One drop of my semen in his daughter fucks up 1,000 years. And then for it to get back to blonde hair, blue-eyed, our progeny now would have to only deal with white, and then their progeny would have to only, and it takes approximately 7 generations. Now, her dad ain't even gonna be around to see that shit. So she fucked up big time. Because he always gonna see a little nigger down in his line. And if he's the only boy, or let's say he's the only girl, it's the only, it's like, you crush your daddy's dream. You know what I mean? And this is your life, not your daddy's life, right? This is your life, not not your mommy's life, right? So this is the real reason for white supremacy and why it's pervasive in society right now. It's just for the preservation of their phenotype. That's it. Nothing else. And I can't fault them for that. I can't say that that's not a noble idea. I can say many things about it. I could say that the mechanisms behind them keeping that concept alive are diabolical, treacherous, murderous, evil. Yeah, sure, I can say all that stuff. But the objective, the final result, what they're looking for, what is the primal urge, I understand it. I understand it. Now, do I have this primal urge and do I worry about stuff like that? I think I did have that primal urge because my daughters look like me. Well, I have girls, right? So they don't look like me. Like, you don't want no fucking girl looking like me. But they're beautiful daughters. I have beautiful girls. And no, I'm not putting their picture up here for you motherfuckers to see. I have beautiful daughters, and but they have my skin tone, they look like me. And if a European was to have progeny with me, our son or daughter gonna look like me. If an Asian has progeny with me, they're gonna look like me. If, and I'm talking North Asian or South Asian. If an Aborigine has a child with me, they're gonna look like me. If a Nigerian has a child like me, with me, they're gonna look like me. Anybody on planet Earth that is compatible with my DNA, so me talking about humans here, because we're into the bestiality nonsense, right? So humans, any human that I copulate with, our offspring are gonna look like me. So that's why we don't give a shit. And this is basically what the reason why we've been letting in bullshit ad infinitum. Like, from the beginning of time, we did not have to worry about our children not looking like us. That's not something that we even studied. Like, it's not something that is important, because it was going to happen anyway. It was inevitable. So you see later on, when, you know, after thousands and 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 thousands of years, and then the appearance of, you know, the recessive strain of humans appeared on the planet. And when I say the recessive strain, I'm not saying this as it's a negative. So please don't take it wrong. Like, people will say, like, dominant versus recessive, one's negative, one's positive. I'm not saying one's negative and one's positive. I'm just saying what is. Okay? Like, so when people that came on the planet, or people that were, you know, that were not exposed to certain elements, and you know, quote unquote lost pigmentation, or there was experimentation, whatever the fuck, right? When white people came onto the planet, and people of fairer skin and fairer complexion and whatnot came onto the planet, and we were civilizing the planet, we would not have an issue of mixing in with everybody else, because we knew we were the original, and it's just, we're all family. But this is not the case with the European, and especially when the colonists went to different areas, and then they, you know, and then they had peaceful sexual relations with the, they were raping the fuck out of the natives, right? So, and when the children were coming out, they're seeing, wait a minute, I'm not seeing no white baby, like, it's just them I'm seeing. So, you know, they wise up and say, okay, this is not the way no, because that only produces more potential enemies or adversaries. Especially if I rape the guy's mom, right? So, you know, like, you gotta be careful with that shit. And a lot of extermination programs, you know, occurred because of that alone. And this is why you don't see the real Native Americans anymore. You see a bunch of people that look like Europeans, with feathers in their hair and shit. Even though if you look at the Redskin symbol, you see a guy that's much darker than me. And nobody's saying, hey, Nafir Nun, that's that Asian guy. Hey, Nafir Nun, that's that Russian guy. Hey, Nafir Nun, that's that Indian guy. Hey, they're saying black guy, and more times they're probably saying, look, that fucking nigger. Right? So, you know, like, nobody's thinking that even though I might be mixed or whatever the hell, you know, like, dominant DNA. And this is why I have problems with some people saying that, you know, mixed people aren't black and whatever. This is due to a lack of knowledge, and due to a lack of history, of knowledge of history. Now, in the beginning, the UN only classified you as either white or non-white. I wonder why. Now, you see, with the amount of people that have been exterminated, like the Tasmanians and so, exterminated off the face of the planet. You're not even seeing these guys no more, right? So the amount of people that have been exterminated, and what you see now. Okay, even for example, I probably have the clip and I can show it to you. I'll put it up here, and then I'll come back and talk about it. But you'll see the Hawaiians, the natural. They're talking about there's a Bugs Bunny, some Looney Tunes shit. And it was black and white, because I have the whole Looney Tunes collection, right? I have kids, right? So, fuck. They ain't watching Powerpuff Girls. So, yeah, I'll let them watch Cotton Picking and all that shit, but I watch Bugs Bunny and I'm okay. So, I know this shit. I know this Powerpuff Girls and all that shit and SpongeBob. Okay. 13-year-olds twerking on YouTube? Fuck. So, Bugs Bunny. Way before friggin' Powerpuff Girls and friggin' Hannah Montana. So what? Yeah, Smurfs and friggin' Care Bears and shit. That's what they watched. Even though that's, you know, way before they watched that shit. Anyway, so I was watching this Looney Tunes episode, and it was, I think it's the Hawaiian moon or the Honolulu moon. I'll put it up for you guys. And the Hawaiians, you're seeing the Hawaiians as black people, curly hair, and you're seeing the man and the woman. The woman's doing the hula dance, and the man's doing something, and they have them like light-skinned black people. I remember the Samoans in WWF. It used to be called WWF. Now it's WWE, right? But the Samoans, Tonga Kid and shit, that guy looked like my family, man. And nobody's saying that guy is Asian, South Pacific and all that shit, right? So much extermination has happened that we don't really see the original people. And a lot of other races are playing this game too. A lot of other races. And let me sidebar for a second. You see that term race? Dangerous term. Very dangerous term. Now, when you were a little kid and somebody talked about race, you're saying to where? When on your marks, get set, that's a race, a competition. Who's faster? Who's gonna come in first? Race was the term race. If you look in the etymological dictionary, and I'll post it up here for you guys. If you look at the term race, it started to be applied to humans after the slave trade. And it is a competition where right now European white people are first place, and then black people are last place, and then the other, you know, yellow and brown and all this heinous stuff is in between, right? And they take different places. You know, at one point the Mediterranean might have been neck and neck with, you know, and then terrorism happened, so they start to, you know, but whites on the top, blacks on the bottom. It's a race. You finish first, we finish last. So I don't really like the term race, right? Because when I say I don't like the term, when I use the term, I understand what it really means. There is a human race, and it's comprised of many different looks. But the genetics speak for itself. Some is dominant, some is recessive. Right? So, now, the other races that are on the planet, the other races, let's talk about the people that you'd primarily consider to be Indians from the India area, Southern Asia, and then you have the Northern Asia, which you'd consider to be the Asians, even though Russia is in Asia, but let's say the Asians, right, which, you know, the ones that you typically say are from China or Japan or Thailand or what. But you see now, even now, when you get into Thailand and the South Pacific, and you go look at their gods look like me. So, and I know they're anyway. Those regions now are playing a game of hiding information as well. And I understand. I get it. You don't want to rock the boat and fuck up your shit that you're getting right now by association. I get it. But you got to be careful, because if they succeed in their plan and get rid of all the Africans off the planet in the next 150 years or so, right? Who the hell do you think they're coming for next? They already did it. You know what I'm saying? So you got to be real careful playing that game, right? Because it could backfire on your ass, right? So when I see a lot, and I live in an area where there's a lot of Indian people, and this shit pisses me off. This shit pisses me off, eh? Because I remember when the Indian people started to migrate here. When I say the Indian people, I'm mixed with Indian as well. So if you want to try to claim that shit about, oh, you don't like Indians, yeah, eat a fucking crotch. Because too much of my family is Indian for me to be dumb like that. It's just that I have dominant DNA in my family as well, and I'm a black guy, quote unquote, right? So, like, you see, I'm in an area that's dominated by Indians, right? Well, they call this area Brown Town. All right, that's how much Indians it. It's like, or I think it's Sikhville was the one I heard today, or Sikhsdale or some shit, right? Now, I remember, okay, that's this shit that pisses me off because I seen some of them dissing me and dissing black, and a lot of them do this behind closed doors. And when I was growing up, this wasn't the case. And you know why this wasn't the case? Because you were too busy getting dissed your fucking self. The packy talk and all that shit. Right? Ain't you remember? We were wearing a tissue on your fucking head and shit? The booger rag on your head and shit? You don't remember those jokes they're calling you, talking about your tracksuits and all that shit? So who were you chilling with at those times? It was us, man. And we didn't call you those names. We weren't calling you Packy and all that stuff, right? And now, all of a sudden, you got some status in the area, and you're dealing with us like you're dealing with the Dalit now. You're dealing with some Dalit, like the Untouchables and shit, like that, like niggers fuck a nigger, right? When 20 years ago and prior, you guys were on some fucking nobody gave a hey, the amount of talk that we heard about Indian people, okay? And we would even tell you, yo, they don't like you, man. They tell you smell like curry and shit. And when the white people be dissing the Indians like this, even bringing the shit around us, right? It's not like we were saying, yeah, ha, 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 ha. Because we know at the same time that they're saying the same shit about us at the dinner table when they leave, right? So, we saw you get some shit treatment, and now you want to turn around and give us some shit treatment. Same with the Chinese or the Asian, the North Asian. You guys got some shit treatment here too, man. And now you want to turn around and shit on us, right? You got to be careful playing that game. You got to be careful playing that game, because if they are successful and are to exterminate all of us, who the hell do you think they're gonna shit on next, right? It's just really, it's simple. It's simple shit. It's just 1 + 1 = 2 or 11. It does not equal cat. 1 + 1 does not equal book. At least fucking stick in the numbers, right? And so it's fucking just simple logics. Every place that a certain group has went, they've given hardship to the group that they've encountered. Period. So just because they've eased up some of the hardship for a minute, it's not time for you to start turning around and shitting on everybody else. And this also goes now for my people. When I say my people, I'm a human, right? So, and I'm way too mixed to be saying but I'm an African, right? But when I say African, I'm just saying that so you understand. I'm a black guy, but I'm not a black guy, but I'm a black guy. But I understand, the slave terms and the nomenclatures and the colored and the neat. I get all that shit, but it's just too much to get into right now. We're already freaking 20-something minutes into the tape, right? So, as I'm saying, it's just a dangerous game to be playing. And now, you see black people want to do this shit to each other. And that's a fucking dangerous game. Because you want to, too many black people want to go, and I get through with this shit, enough for the time, eh? Because I can speak, and I'm educated, and I interface with different people very easily. It's not hard, and I can speak with Ebonics if I want to, but Ebonics to me is stupid because English already is a bastard language that is already convoluted and confusing and misleading and duplicit. You know what I mean? Like you have to be careful using English. There's a double meaning a lot of the time. So for me to be using slang all the time, especially depending on what I want, right? And depending on what opportunities are presented in front of me, I know how to act. But too many times, apologetic Negroes want to shit on their brother to prove that they're not like the rest of them. And think that you're going to succeed with the adversarial group. Dumb. And now, the biggest part of this, I would have to say, is with the black woman, unfortunately. Now, I'm not going to get into some type of a rant like a gentleman that I watch on YouTube a lot. His name is Tommy Sotomayor. This gentleman I think is hilarious. I think he's dynamic. I like listening to him. And I agree with a lot of the stuff that he has to say. I agree with his points. For the most part. But you see, I think that a lot of the information that he gives, even though accurate, is too one-sided. Because you would think that through his depiction of black women that they are all beasts. And while the actions of most black women that I encounter today is not something that I would recommend for my daughters or any woman that I love. I would still not go and call them beasts. And because if you understand the dynamic and if you understand bandwagon jumping and you understand justification, and I'm not the one to say shit like, well, we say nigger so they can say nigger. I'm not the one to say that type of shit. Because the bottom line is, we say nigger and shit, so they say nigger and shit. And that's the excuse that they use. And unless you start clapping the fuck out of these assholes that say that shit, they're going to continue to say it and justify it, right? So when your woman is consistently calling you a dog in every form of media, the black woman, men are dogs, men are dogs, men are dogs. And that's a campaign to smear black men. Okay? Now, if you really think that black men are the only men that fuck around on their women, then you deserve everything you get when you step outside the race. Or when you step outside of yourself. You deserve everything you get. Because that was the dumbest reason to step out. That's the dumbest reason to turn lesbian. Well, my man, all men cheat. The only reason a man going to cheat on your ass, to be honest with you, nah, I'm not even going to get into too much of that shit, but is if you're not pulling your own weight, okay? Or that's just the type of dude that he is, and it has nothing to do with you. But it had to do with your selection. You selected him. But it has nothing to do with you. It's either it has something to do with you or it doesn't have nothing to do with you. But this is every type of man. Every type of man. You have men that do that shit and men that don't do that shit. And the majority of men do that shit. Now, for you to say black men are dogs, how come you're not hearing white women out there calling their men dogs en masse? How come you're not hearing Asian women calling their men dogs en masse? How come you're not hearing Indian women calling their men dogs en masse? And look at how the world respects their men, and in turn doesn't consider those women to be aggressive and to have attitude and all that shit that has been associated with you. So And then on top of that, the self-hatred with all the wigs and shit, and all the makeup and shit, and all the fakery and shit, and all the tattoos and shit. Like, if you're getting scarification, if you're in some type of ritual and you got some symbolic tattoo to you know, you were going through a rite of passage or some shit, okay, you ain't doing that. You put footprints, what the fuck? You put some freaking, some saying, and you had to, and they screwed it up, and then you had to, and now you have freaking 10 tattoos and 17 piercings, and you're not part of no fucking tribe. You didn't go through the rite of passage. You didn't go your spirit walk and see where your spirit animal is and find your guide. And you didn't do none of that shit. You're twerking on fucking YouTube. And how much did you get paid? How much ones were thrown at your ass when you were twerking on YouTube? None? You understand? It's not a good look, man. It's not. It's just showing self-hate. It's showing this is all I think I have to offer, and this is all that makes me viable. And I'm not even viable in my own skin. I'm not even viable in my own hair. And all of my men are dogs. And so now, and you think black man's off the hook? No, black man is not off the hook. Not by a long shot. Now we've encouraged the shit, the sloth, the mental sluggishness of our people. We've encouraged it. And this shit about not taking care of your kids, dudes, it's bullshit, man. Because, like, and I hear this talk too much, especially amongst Jamaicans in this community. Well, my dad wasn't around, so, and I'm fine, so I don't need to be around. I just, you know, they'll be fine. I hear that shit too much, man. Like, you really think so? You know how much shit is put... Okay. Can you get a fucking good job here right now? Where your kids are gonna be fine when you didn't even take care of them and show them the flex, right? So, you know, like, the black man has to be very careful. And now we stepped onto the bandwagon dissing our women. In public. You see, you don't air that shit out in public. There's so many problems that I could talk about, you know what I mean? But you're not going to hear me talk about all of them in public. I'll talk about the obvious shit that everybody sees, you know what I mean? And try to explain how you can change the overall perception and the way that people look at you by just curbing a few things. Now, women don't want to even hear this shit, especially black women don't even want to hear this shit. And this is the problem. You don't want to hear this shit. Too many of you are fat, man. Too many of you are fat. You're just too fat. And it ain't fair. Because now your man will have to take care. If you do get a good man and stick around with you, right? When you hit 50 years old and you have high blood pressure and high cholesterol, he gonna have to fucking brunt all that shit. And if you're in the States, there ain't no coverage, right? So like, he gonna have to take care of all that shit now. Because you want to eat fucking whatever the fuck. And you don't understand yourself, right? So now, of course we want to eat what we want to eat. Like, to be honest, food doesn't run me. So it's not like if I didn't have to eat, I probably wouldn't even eat. Like, to me, eating is almost like a waste of time. I could be doing other shit. I could be generating money. I could be dealing with my kids. It's almost like a waste of time. Eating. Fucking eating. You know what I mean? Like, you're fucking eating. What if I'm going to eat? I'm going to eat some shit to slow down my body and whatever. And now that we know that these things are shit, we're going to feed it to our children, right? And now, but let's forget that. We don't know how our biology works. Not enough of us are versed in those areas to even understand it. So I'll just put it simply, okay? I'll put it simple for you. Black people recycle fat at a much higher rate than anybody else on this planet. We recycle fat. So when you see Betty in the gym working out and her body's looking fitter than yours, ass is looking nicer than yours. White girl's ass looking nicer than yours now. Right? It's because she's burning fat when she goes into the gym. She can burn fat at a much higher rate than you can. And on top of that, you don't even want to burn and too much sweat and shit because of that shit in your hair. Because it costs how much money or whatever and whatever. So you don't want to sweat it out hardcore like them. You see them in the gym working out. Hardcore. You don't see that with the black girls, man. And you're eating the same thing that they're eating. But you're going to gain more weight because your jobs primarily are sit-down jobs. Where the black man's job is not a sit-down job. We're still in the fucking plant. Laboring and shit. Picking up boxes and shit for the most part. A lot of us ain't doing job with our brain. You know what I'm saying? Do hand shit. So we don't even have a choice but to burn fucking the shit. We got only an hour to eat. And then we have to be on the line or whatever the fuck they call that stuff. I never really did that stuff. But you know what I'm saying? We have to be in the factory. Or doing some shit. Manual labor. You know? You're sitting down. So while you're sitting down, recycling fat and then eating more fat, what do you think the result's going to be? The result is there, right now. Look down. So, but you don't want to hear this shit. And then you get upset when dude wants to flash. Or dude's fucking around. Or dude is like, he's not giving it to you the same way you used to give it to you or whatever. And then now you're not even feeling like the same way you used to feel because you're putting on weight and then you want to make excuses about, you know, like, well, I just had kids and they have fucking kids too, man. So, it's not to say, I understand the problem, okay? But it is a problem. And I understand that many people are not versed in the biology to know how to eat. And then you're being told milk does a body good and make sure you know the Atkins diet and all this shit. But just think about it this way. When you get the high blood pressure, what does the doctor tell you to stop eating? Okay, stop eating that shit from now before you get the high blood pressure. It's not rocket science. 2 plus 2 equals 22 or 4. It doesn't equal egg. It doesn't equal fucking carpet. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so let's stick within the lines of logic here. You know, like I don't want to go too far out and start talking about, you know, the melanin and all. I could get into all of that, but it's not necessary here. Just like it's not necessary to talk about all the ways that, you know, the systematic white supremacy affects us. We just have to know that it is to maintain their phenotype. It is to maintain blonde hair, blue eyes. So every shit that they throw at us is to maintain blonde hair, blue eyes. Does that mean that they give a shit about you? No. It means they don't give a shit about you. It means that any shit they give about you is make sure that they don't come and fucking mix it up with me. So that means make sure that his status or her status does not reach mine. Make sure that he doesn't live where I live. Make sure he doesn't eat what I eat. Make sure he doesn't attend what I attend. Make sure he doesn't believe what I... It's a simple shit, man. Like, if we all mix, they exterminate themselves. And that's why white supremacy exists. Simple and plain. Does that mean that we can't go through? Does that mean that we can't succeed? Of course it doesn't mean that. But we have to understand why they're doing what they're doing first. Because what they're doing will get you off into some tangent and you'll forget about why. And how they're doing it will get you off into some tangent, you forget about why. And when they're doing, you'll forget about why. But if you understand why they're doing it, then you'd be able to counter that shit. You'd be able to understand, okay, wait a minute. It's really a heavy inferiority complex. A heavy inferiority complex. So to keep calling this shit white supremacy is dangerous. It is white survival. White supremacy equals white survival. So if we look at it from the perspective of white survival, we will understand that it's not white supremacy, it's white scarcity. Scarcity is not supreme. It's not. And if something can be wiped out, listen, that's why there's so much homosexuality in our community, all that kind of shit. And I can get into all that stuff as well too. Unnecessary. Unnecessary for me to get into all of that stuff. They do not want us mixing with them. They're started off, okay, they're 1/10 or less of the population of the planet. If that 1/10 mixes with the 9/10, the 1/10 is no more. So the 9/10 have to fuck off, basically. That's what's popping. So how can we make them fuck off? Disease, war, famine, psychological, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, whatever we need to do, you stay over there. Because if you come over here, we're done. That is not supreme. That's some scaredy cat shit. And if we start looking at it from that perspective, maybe, and I'm not saying this is the correct, the solution or nothing like that. I'm just saying that if we look at it from that perspective, understand that white supremacy is not truth. White supremacy is scaredy cat shit. Some timid shit. Some overcompensation shit. Like, the black girl. Okay, I'll put it easy for Mads. The black girl who's like 300 pounds and 5'2", but she has big breasts and a huge ass. Duh, she's like 300 pounds and fucking 5'2". But she's wearing the stuff that has like low cleavage and ass is outside and tights and whatever, and has like weave coming out of her ass and then red lipstick and overcompensating. Yeah, exactly. So I just wanted to get that out there, and if you agree with me, cool. If you don't agree with me, cool. But that's basically what's popping. So hopefully after this discourse, people will understand that this thing that we call white supremacy is really a dire and like a last-ditch attempt to maintain their presence on the planet. So, being that that's that, peace.